Hey, what is going on, guys? It's AryA back again. This video is a comprehensive review of the new Black Ops 4 Zombies map, Dead of the Night. There's a lot to talk about, there's a lot I like about this map, but there's also a lot that this map got wrong, and make no mistake about it, we will get into as much detail as possible. This video is gonna be a long one, so just grab a snack, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Dead of the Night is the first DLC map for Black Ops 4 Zombies, and we all know that DLC 1 is very important. It could make or break a game for some people. If it's good, that shows the players that there's probably a great DLC season ahead, and if it's not good, some people just tend to give up and move on to other games. The golden standard for Zombies DLC 1 is their Eisendrache. So how does Dead of the Night hold up against their Eisendrache, which was one of the most popular maps of all time? Well, not too bad. As far as the reception goes, this map is actually well received by the majority of the community. Now, is it as popular or even as good as their Eisendrache? No, absolutely not. Their Eisendrache set the bar so high that I don't think there will be any maps that will come even close to it, at least not anytime soon. Okay, we gotta talk about it. We gotta talk about the marketing. Let's just get it out of the way right now. Dead of the Night is the most poorly marketed map in the history of Call of Duty Zombies. We didn't get a trailer for it. Instead, we got a 55-minute live stream of Treyarch devs sitting down and talking about what was going to be in this DLC. And even worse, out of those 55 minutes, only 14 minutes and 35 seconds were dedicated to zombies. The rest was just David Vonderhaar and Dan Bunting talking about multiplayer and Blackout. And apparently, for some reason, Australia managed to get their hands on this map a lot earlier than they should have, so that was just adding insult to injury. Rumors are PlayStation messed up on this one. Apparently, they released the map earlier than they should have in Australia and New Zealand, and once it was done, they couldn't do anything about it. In summary, the marketing for this map was nothing short of a fucking disaster, and it's such a shame because this map is decent, and you can tell people worked really hard on it and they really cared about it, but for some reason, it just didn't get promoted. I mean, for fuck's sake, the Attack of the Radioactive Thing had more marketing behind it than this map. At a time when the community is so volatile and they really want new content and they really want to be hyped up, the demand is there, the supply isn't. Yes, I know economics in your face, Miss Hannigan, who failed me in economics last year, you stupid bitch. It just baffles me how Treyarch managed to get actors who played pivotal roles in some big name franchises such as Game of Thrones and Harry Potter and not even bother to promote it. Well, at least multiplayer and Blackout got some good content. Actually, never mind. The layout of Dead of the Night is quite simple. The map is basically divided into three sections: East, West, and North. The East and West sections consist of 2 stories each. The East section leads to the greenhouse and the West section leads to the cemetery. And the North is the forest, which is where Pack-a-Punch is. At the center of all 3 sections, we have the main hall. At the far end of each section, we have fast travels, which will teleport you to the main hall. This is very smart map design, but it's also nothing new. This is pretty much the same basic map design as the one in Derice. You have 3 sections connected by a center, and in each of those sections you have a teleporter that will take you to the center. It's obviously not as basic as Derice, but the idea is the same. The map has some verticality to it. You have the library, which has stairs leading up to the study, you have the wine cellar, which is underground, and you have the dining room that has stairs leading up to the trophy room in the East section. This is great for mixing up the gameplay, as running through stairways with zombies chasing after you and maybe even spawning in front of you could make for some great clutch moments and exciting gameplay choices. And it also makes for some quick escape routes, as sometimes you just need to jump down from a ledge to get away from a sticky situation. The map could be a little difficult to learn for newcomers, since there are areas inside the mansion that are similar and they have the same color palette, but once you actually learn where everything is, you realize that the map is actually very simple, unlike some other Black Ops 4 Zombies maps. The only annoying thing about the layout of the map is that when you're trying to get set up in the early rounds and you don't have stamina, sometimes you might end up going going back and forth between the cemetery and the greenhouse. And the distance between the main hall and the cemetery is kind of long. If you're in the cemetery and you're trying to get back to the main hall, you use the fast travel, but if you're going from the main hall to the cemetery, you don't have a fast travel for that, so you end up walking a very long distance, and it can disrupt the flow of the gameplay simply because you have nothing to do but walk a very long distance, and it can take you out of the experience a little bit. This is one of those things that you might notice in your 50th playthrough. It won't bother you if you're just getting used to the map, but once you do get used to it, the more you play the map, the more those little things will annoy you, because even though it's a very small thing, you have to deal with it every game, and one day you might actually stop playing because you don't want to deal with that small problem anymore. So that little detail contributes to lowering the replay value of the map. It's kind of like that old married couple who've been together for 50 years, and every time one of them says or does anything slightly irritating, like, you know, breathing or something, their spouse starts to have a major psychotic breakdown and just loses their shit.
I hate you.
I know that. I know
hate
that. Why don't you shoot me, you son of a
I
bitch?
would if it wasn't for going to jail.
Now let's talk about sound design. The audio and sound design in this map is fucking awesome. The round change music is very good, and it helps establish the creepy and eerie vibe of a mansion that's being haunted by werewolves and vampires. This is something that Treyarch has nailed time and time again, and they don't get nearly enough credit for it. The songs associated with different areas of the map are absolutely beautiful. I mean, just listen to this. After listening to that, I feel sad, a little scared, but also hopeful, euphoric, and inspired at the same time. I don't know what to feel, it's like being on acid. I also like the song that plays when you enter the dining room. This one is a little bit more ominous, and it makes you feel like something bad is going to happen, which, spoiler alert, it does. The song that plays during the boss fight and the outro cutscene is also very good. It's pretty much just a song that hypes you up and lets you know that you are in the climax of the story. Overall, this map has a simple yet somewhat difficult to learn map layout and amazing sound design. Good job, Treyarch. Now all you have to do is give us a music video for this map so I can die a happy man. Dead of the Night as a map looks good. It doesn't blow you away with amazing visuals, there's no overuse of volumetrics in the map, it's not too colorful and it's not too pretty, and it's nothing impressive. However, it does a few things right. You see, the devs had a vision in their minds of how this map would make you feel when you're just simply walking and looking around. This map is a haunted mansion. It's not supposed to be too dark and scary like Blood of the Dead or Mob the Dead. There's not gonna be bodies hanging from the ceiling. Instead, it's a lot more subtle when it comes to trying to make you feel a sense of dread and a little bit of disorientation. When you're inside the mansion, the color palette consists of orange and red, but when you're outside the mansion, it's mostly dark green and blue. So when you're inside, it's colorful, vibrant, bright, and warm, which makes you feel kind of safe. But when you go outside, it's dark and cold, which makes you feel a little unsafe, and it makes you think about what could be lurking in the shadows. It gives you that fear of the unknown. That's why people are afraid of the dark, because they don't know what could be there. If the map was all dark, you wouldn't really get that feeling because you spawn in the dark. There's no contrast, there's nothing to compare it to. But if you spawn in a colorful and bright house and then eventually have to step outside, you go from feeling safe to, holy shit, a giant bat just landed in front of me and I have no idea what the fuck it's gonna do to me.
Bat? No. I'm gonna bend you over and right in the ass.
The devs did well with the visuals in this map. Inside of the mansion could look a little better, some of the textures don't look good, but other than that I feel like they did well as far as trying to make you feel a certain way with visuals. The theme of the map, the visuals, the aesthetics, and the audio are all coherent and they all blend well together. Nothing feels out of place. There is one thing that kind of ruins the vibe, but it's not the map itself, it's these guys. The Catalyst zombies are just too colorful for this map. They don't mesh well with everything this map is trying to be. When you're outside in the cemetery and it's all dark, every single enemy in the map blends in with the color palette of the environment to a certain degree. Every single enemy type except for the Catalyst zombies. It's just weird when you're fighting vampires and werewolves in a dark cemetery and all of a sudden you see this glowing bright blue dickhead walking around, and it just goes against everything this map is trying to do. The Catalyst zombies, they just don't belong in this map. They've toned down the Catalyst zombies because it just seems like in a map like 9 there were a lot more of them, and if they weren't in this map it would be almost perfect. Okay, before I get into this, I gotta warn you in advance. I'm more of a gameplay kind of guy. Gameplay to me is the most important aspect of a game. I know storyline and characters and all that matter, but to me they're just kind of the cherry on top. And no one is gonna eat a pile of shit with a cherry on top. So if the gameplay is bad, everything else doesn't really matter, not to me at least. But if the gameplay is good, not only am I gonna enjoy playing the game, but it also gives me incentive to dive even deeper into the experience and enjoy the storyline and the characters. So why am I telling you all this? Well, it's because I want you to know my thought process and how I evaluate a map, and also because I'm gonna spend the most time on this section talking about gameplay, and some of the stuff might seem very nitpicky, and I know that, and I'm going to do my best to try and explain why something doesn't work or why something works really well. So with all that being said, let's talk about the gameplay aspect of Dead of the Night. This is where this map really shines through. It's a very good map with a lot of fun gameplay mechanics. One of the most important things in a zombies map is content. Now, what do I mean by that? Basically, give us things to do. Give us different weapons to play with, give us as many side Easter eggs as possible, and make them fun and rewarding. When you look at past zombies maps that were really popular, there's a recurring trend of the game giving you different weapons to play with and different side Easter eggs that are somewhat silly but very fun to do. Let's look at Der Eisendrache. You have a bow and you can upgrade it 4 different ways. On top of that, you have the Ragnaroks, and for a silly but fun side Easter egg, you have the Plunger. Now let's look at Mob the Dead. You have a Blundergat, which you can pack a punch to get the Sweeper, or you can upgrade it to get the Acid Gat and then pack a punch it to get the Vitrolic Withering. Or you can have both the Blundergat and an Acid Gat and pack a punch them both. You can also get the Hell's Retriever and upgrade it to the Hell's Redeemer. On top of all of that, you can get the Spoon and upgrade it to get the Golden Spork. Dead of the Night does this really well. It's packed full of content. You have Alistair's Folly, which you can upgrade to get the Chaos Theory, and you can then upgrade it again to get Alistair's Annihilator. You also have the Savage Impaler. On top of that, you have the Wooden Steak Knife and Silver Bullets and fun and rewarding side Easter eggs like the Secret Room Easter eggs. It becomes a lot harder to get bored playing this map when there is so many different goodies to play with and there's so much to do. It also makes the setup process a little bit more enjoyable, because even though it does take relatively long to get set up in this map, it's rewarding because once you do get set up, you're quite powerful and the weapons that you have in your arsenal are fun to use. Another important factor in gameplay is the balancing of different enemy types. In Dead of the Night, we're introduced to the vampires, the werewolves, and the Crimson Nosferatu. Wait, hold on, I'm having flashbacks. Oh god. The vampires are fast, have more health than a regular zombie, and when they hit you, a red aura will appear around the screen as if you're in red screen. Your heart will also start pounding as if you're one hit away from going down. This is more of a distraction than anything. The game is just trying to confuse you and kind of distract you to make you think you're about to go down. So as the result of that, you become more cautious and more aware of your surroundings, and it keeps you on your toes, and you're gonna be constantly watching out and listening for vampires spawning in. It diverts your attention from what you're doing in the game to your health bar, and it's trying to make you get yourself killed, and it's trying to make you a smarter player. And if you don't make the right decision at that moment, you're gonna be your own downfall. It's a nice touch when you really think about it. It's kind of similar to what Jason Blundell was trying to do with the parasites in Shadows of Evil.
It's something that actually doesn't have a overwhelming threat on you,
Yeah.
but moves your attention so that layered design and mentality can then put other pressures on you.
When the vampires hit you, it also makes Quick Revive somewhat ineffective. Quick Revive basically increases the regeneration rate and makes it so that your health starts regenerating 3.5 seconds after you get hit, as opposed to the normal 5 seconds without Quick Revive. If a vampire hits you, the second ability of Quick Revive becomes ineffective, so even if you have Quick Revive, the health regeneration will start 5 seconds after you get hit, even though it's supposed to be 3.5 seconds. You'll still have the increased regeneration rate, which means that once you do start regenerating your health, it'll take less longer for you to get back to full health. I think this is actually a smart decision on Treyarch's part, because ever since they introduced the new perk system, people have been complaining that there are still crutch perks like Quick Revive and Stamina Up, and what they're doing with vampires in this map is to balance the new perk system a little bit more by essentially implementing an equalizer to tone down the effectiveness of Quick Revive. Now, this is good and bad. It's good because even though it might come off as a reactionary move, it still shows that they're listening, and it's bad because it only takes care of the problem in one map, and this might just be them testing the waters to see how everyone would react, because I think it's safe to say that if they nerfed Quick Revive altogether, people would probably be pissed, but overall I don't think this is a bad thing. However, I do think that the vampires are not as balanced as they should be. If you have an enemy type in the game and you want to know if they're balanced or not, you need to look at different characteristics like movement speed, health, damage per hit, aggressiveness, and maybe even spawn rate. If you have an enemy type in the game that has a high movement speed, lots of health, can do a lot of damage per hit, is very aggressive, which means they can hit you really fast repeatedly, and can also spawn in a lot, that means you have a poorly balanced enemy type. There has to be a trade-off somewhere. If they're fast and aggressive, then they should have low health or maybe a low spawn rate. An example of that would be the Hellhounds. They're fast and aggressive, but they don't have a lot of health. If an enemy type has a lot of health and is fast and can do a lot of damage per hit, then their spawn rate needs to be low to compensate for how powerful they are. An example of that would either be the Panzer Soldat or the Blightfather. The problem with the vampires is that they're fast, they're aggressive, they spawn in a lot, and have more health than a regular zombie. I think their health needs to be nerfed in order to compensate for how fast and aggressive they are. But it's still not too bad, because the difference between vampires and this is that here the game doesn't give you an equalizer. It doesn't give you a decent wonder weapon to deal with that overpowered threat. But in Dead of the Night you have the Savage Impaler and the Steak Knife, and they're specifically designed to kill vampires. The Savage Impaler can kill the vampires and the Crimsons with one shot, and the Steak Knife can do the same with one hit. Out of all the good gameplay decisions in this map, this one is probably one of the best, because vampires and Crimsons can be really annoying, especially the Crimsons, and we'll get into that in a bit. This shows that the devs were aware of the fact that vampires are annoying and they're a bit of a headache. But if you as a player take the time to learn how to get the Savage Impaler and the Steak Knife, then they won't be as big of a problem anymore. The game rewards you for taking the time to learn the map. I do think the quest to get the Savage Impaler is kind of annoying and repetitive for multiple reasons. One is that you already have to do an escort mission to open up Pack-a-Punch, and now you have to do the exact same thing, except now you have to do it in spirit mode, and that lasts for a limited time, and if you run out, you have to go back to the Pack-a-Punch and go in spirit mode again. And two, the ghost escort mission is just annoying in general because you have to find the ghost, and she's blue, and the wallbuys in this map have the exact same color as the ghost, which is just a poor choice of color. Sometimes it's hard to distinguish them. You could see some bright blue in the corner of your eye thinking it's the ghost, but it's actually the wallbuy, and that's kind of annoying. And three, the ghost is slow, and if you're doing the main Easter egg, you have to do a total of 4 escort missions, and that's just way too many. Escort missions are just not fun. If I have to do it once, it's fine. If I have to do it twice, I'll suffer through it, but more than twice in the same game is just bad. It's not fun, and it's boring. You already have to do an escort mission every game just to open up Pack-a-Punch, which I think is a terrible choice. An escort mission to open up Pack-a-Punch? Seriously, you could have come up with anything other than an escort mission and it would have been fine. It just makes the Savage Impaler quest tedious and unnecessarily long. Now let's talk about the Crimson Nosferatu. These are basically vampires who snorted way too much cocaine and stayed in the sun for far too long. Now I'm gonna be real with you guys, I fucking hate these assholes. They're faster than a vampire, they crouch when they run so their hitbox is smaller than a vampire, they have much more health, their color is dark red so they blend in with the color palette of the environment pretty well, and they do this shit. God, fucking get off of me! Now to be fair, they don't spawn in that often and you can kill them easily with the Savage Savage Impaler and the Steak Knife, but when they jump on you, it's the worst shit ever. It completely takes you out of the experience and it disrupts the flow of the game. It's hard to see them coming, they jump on you out of nowhere, and before you know it, you're dead. And sometimes more than one of them will spawn in, and you're completely fucked if you don't have the Savage Impaler. And even if you have it, it shoots projectiles, and the Crimsons run way too fast, and their hitbox is small, which means you could easily miss. And if they jump on you, there's a very good chance that you're gonna go down. I would be fine with them if they didn't do this, but I hate them so much, and I just wish something about them would change. Either lower their spawn frequency or their movement speed, but something has to change. I just can't stand them the way they are right now. Next, we have the werewolves. Unlike the vampires and crimsons, the werewolves aren't that big of a threat. I mean, they can do real damage, it's just that they're kind of slow and a little bit sluggish, and they're pretty easy to dodge even though they can run and jump at you. They're just a big enemy for you to waste your ammo on. Their design is very cool, they're a cool looking enemy type, unlike the vampires who look like naked teenagers on bath salts. They're not that aggressive, they're not that fast, and they have a lot of health. They spawn almost every other round past round 15, and they tend to spawn in towards the end of the round, which is great. But for a boss zombie that looks really intimidating, he's really easy to deal with, and he's a pretty well balanced enemy type. Then we have the Catalyst zombies, and not only do they ruin the vibe of this map, they ruin the gameplay as well. Even though they've been toned down, they still don't belong in this map. The gameplay without them is already chaotic as it is, and Catalyst zombies make it too chaotic to a point where it's just obnoxious at times. Now let's talk about the main wonder weapon. It's called Alistair's Folly, and you can upgrade it to get the Chaos Theory and upgrade it again to get Alistair's Annihilator. Alistair's Folly is pretty much a ray gun without splash damage. I like the simplistic design of the weapon, and I like how you can get it out of the box and off the wall by doing a little quest. This is one of the more positive changes in Black Ops 4 Zombies. They allow you to craft the wonder weapon, and they also put it in the mystery box, so that way if you're a casual player and you don't know how to craft the wonder weapon, you can still get it out of the box. I personally like to craft the wonder weapons because it's more consistent that way, and I have shit luck with the mystery box, so I don't really want to waste too much time hitting the mystery box, but I digress. When you upgrade it to the Chaos Theory, you get two different types of charged shots that are randomized, and they're very powerful, and the fact that they're random makes this weapon all the more interesting. It makes it unpredictable and exciting, and when you upgrade it to get Alistair's Annihilator, you get two additional types of charged shots, and that makes it even more exciting. Instead of giving you a wonder weapon that can be upgraded into 4 different wonder weapons, they gave you one wonder weapon that when upgraded has 4 different effects that are randomized. It's a nice breath of fresh air from the usual 4 different elemental wonder weapons. Not to say that that system is bad, I actually like that system a little better than what we get in Dead of the Night, but I also don't want it to get old and repetitive. The randomized charged shots are a new and interesting addition into the game. Now I know I already talked a little bit about the Savage Impaler, but for the sake of consistency, I'm gonna briefly go over it again. The quest for the Savage Impaler is a little tedious to do in every game you play, but this is a weapon you need to have because of the overwhelming amount of vampires and crimsons in the map. I like how the game put the weapon in the box after you do the quest for it, but I still wish that it was in the mystery box from the beginning, much like Alistair's Folly. I love that this weapon has so much ammo because this weapon is a reskin of, God help me, the Enix Shadow Claws in Black Ops 3. And they shoot projectiles, and since the vampires are too fast, you might miss them, especially if you're moving at the same time that you're shooting them. But the fact that this weapon exists at all, and that we have 2 very different wonder weapons with 2 different purposes in this map is a nice touch. The Savage Impaler is good for killing vampires, and Alistair's Annihilator is good for killing zombies, and if that wasn't the case, one of those weapons would be completely useless, but they each serve a different purpose, which mixes up the gameplay. We also have the Steak Knife, which is more of a novelty. It's not very practical to melee the vampires in this game, but if you don't want to do the quest for the Savage Impaler, you can always go for the next best thing, which is the Steak Knife. It has a much simpler and less tedious quest than the Savage Impaler, but it's also not as good as the Savage Impaler, as it's kind of dangerous to get up close and personal with the vampires in this map. It's a welcomed addition, and you can one-hit zombies with it till round 25 as well, which makes it even more useful. There are also 3 secret room side Easter eggs which give you rewards like bonus points or elixirs or a weapon or even silver bullets. The one with the books is a lot simpler and easier than the other ones, but it could give you a better prize than the other ones do, which doesn't make that much sense. The one where you have to melee the wine barrels can be difficult, and you might get a bonus points power up by doing it, which could be a waste of time, but other than that, they're cool small side Easter eggs that breathe life into the map. There are also silver bullets, and they're an interesting addition, but you need 6 different parts to craft them, and each part has 3 different randomized locations, which is a bit of a pain in the ass to memorize and learn, and if you're a casual player, you're probably not gonna bother with it at all. But the absence of silver bullets is not going to ruin the gameplay experience or anything like that. They're not even that powerful. And all of the parts for it, for the most part, have randomized locations in a single area of the map. For example, you need poop for some reason, and it's in the cemetery, but it could be in 3 different locations inside the cemetery. There's also the sulfur that's in the greenhouse and the plate that's in the wine cellar. So it's almost as if they have one location, but then the game breaks this rule by giving other items some really bad random locations. For example, the trophy part has 2 locations in the dining room and 1 location in the west hallway. The candle holder part has completely different random locations. There is one in the entrance hall, one in the main hall, and another one in the billiards room. And the charcoal is in a fireplace, so it's not entirely random. It's easy to remember that it's in a fireplace, but it would be much easier if there weren't 48 fireplaces in this mansion. But the fact that silver bullets give you the ability to refill ammo on a box weapon kind of makes it all worth it. I mean, you can refill your ammo on a Helion salvo, which is the most powerful weapon in the game, so it's not too bad. Let's talk about the setup process and map flow of Dead of the Night. There is no power switch in this map, which is great. I feel like the idea of not having a power switch in the Chaos maps is a nice change. Instead, we have the Sentinel artifact, which in this map is very simple to find and activate. However, the Pack-a-Punch process is pretty much the opposite. It's too tedious. It's tedious to learn, and it's tedious to do every game. You need 3 tuning forks, and to get them, you need to stand inside a circle for a minute, do an escort mission with the ghost, and kill vampires in an area associated with the perk statue. This all sounds like it's very simple on paper, but for the clock step, there are 3 different clocks in 3 different locations, and they all kind of look alike, so when you look into the crystal to see which clock you need to activate, you need to know which is which, so you'll know where you need to go. And the escort mission with the ghost requires you to interact with a certain item to summon the ghost, and there are 7 different items, and you need to know where each of them are. It could be either a painting or the noose in the wine cellar or something. The perk statues have randomized locations as well. There are 5 possible perk locations, but a Danu perk statue will always be in the same location. So when you're getting the vampire tuning fork, you have to look for the right perk statue. There is simply too many locations to memorize just to open up Pack-a-Punch. If I had to memorize a billion locations for different items to get a wonder weapon, I wouldn't really mind, but I personally believe that opening up Pack-a-Punch and turning on the power should always be simple, because I think even the most casual of players should be able to open up Pack-a-Punch by themselves and not have to look up a 10-minute guide. It's not a problem for me right now because I took the time to learn those things, but if you're a casual player, you're gonna be irritated by this. I understand that not everyone is gonna have the time to memorize all these locations, so the Pack-a-Punch process in Dead of the Night is a little tedious. But once you learn everything, the only step that's gonna annoy you a little bit is the ghost escort mission, because escort missions in general are just not fun to do. It can disrupt the flow of the game and overstay its welcome. You also need to build the shield because there's no way you could survive the vampires with no shield. They will constantly jump at you and you'll end up renewing your shield every other round. In the early rounds, you have a lot of items to collect and a lot to do. The first 10 rounds in this map are very important and they determine how the rest of your game is going to go. Because after round 10, there's gonna be a lot of vampires spawning in every round, so if you're not fully set up by then, you're pretty much screwed. If you want to get set up as early as you possibly can, you end up going back and forth between the cemetery and the greenhouse, and if you don't have stamina, it can disrupt the flow of the game a little bit. But other than that, the map flows really well. Because in almost every section of the map, you either have an item to collect or something to do. So you go from section to section completing objectives, collecting items, and killing zombies until the whole map is open. And that's a good thing. There's never really a time when the game forces you to stop or burn through rounds. You're just kind of doing everything as you're opening up the map. There isn't many long distances that disrupt the flow. The fast travels also help with that a lot. If you're not experienced enough and you're just learning the map, the first 10 rounds can be quite slow just because you might forget a certain item that you forgot to pick up or something that you forgot to do, or it could be that you're doing things in an order that requires you to keep going back and forth between the west section and the east section of the map. There is a learning curve when it comes to mastering that setup process, and to be honest, I like that a lot. Because once I learned everything that there was to learn, I actually find it quite enjoyable to get set up as fast as I can. But if you don't like it, I completely understand where you're coming from. If you're a casual player, there's a very good chance that you might not like this aspect of Dead of the Night, but personally, I think this map flows really well. Once you finally get set up, there are different ways you can play the game. You can either train, which is going to be difficult because of the vampires. Usually if I want to train, I do it in either the main hall or the library, or maybe even the greenhouse. This is another thing that this map gets right. It's that there are different fire trap locations in different areas of the map, and there are 3 fire energy cores scattered in 14 different locations in the map, and the game basically gives you the option to set up your fire traps wherever you want. So there are different strategies with different fire traps that you can try. It sucks that the energy cores have 14 different locations. I think that's a little excessive even for this map, but I like the trap itself. It's powerful and it lasts for a while. There is one thing I don't like about the traps, and that's the fact that they're so deadly and they can kill you in an instant if you walk through them. And when you activate them, they instantly turn on, so if you're on the wrong side of it, you might accidentally go through it and down yourself. Usually in the past, the traps would take a second to turn on and they wouldn't down you instantly, at least not with Jug. Now if you have Alistair's Annihilator, there are certain areas in the map that you can set up your trap and basically camp. For some reason, some people are complaining about being able to camp in this map as if it's a bad thing. This is not multiplayer. You can camp in zombies, and the reason why it's okay as opposed to in multiplayer is because you could only get so far with camping. There's gonna be a certain point in the game when the zombies are just gonna be too resilient for you to sit there and shoot them. You can camp in an area and hold out. It's okay. In Derice, which is one of the most iconic maps of all time, camping is an essential part of the gameplay because it's fun and you can't do it forever, so it doesn't really hurt the competitive scene. In Dead of the Night, you can camp, but it's not exactly the easiest thing to do since the vampires and werewolves show up so frequently. You can camp in the mausoleum or the entrance hall and try to hold out for as long as you can, and it's actually pretty fun. You can also exploit the silver bullets and keep using the Helion salvo to get to a high round, but I can't guarantee that you'll have fun doing so. The overall gameplay from round 15 above is pretty fun in this map. It's a little intense and you need to be a little fast to react to the vampires and the crimsons, and the catalyst zombies are a little too much, but nonetheless, the map is really fun to play. Now let's talk about the main Easter egg. I like how it's divided into 3 mini quests. There's a recurring theme of 3s in the map. The map is divided into 3 different areas. You need 3 tuning forks to open up Pack-a-Punch, and you need to do 3 mini quests to get to the boss fight. I really like the main Easter egg for this map, so I'm gonna go over some stuff that I don't like. The Atlas puzzle step is not fun to do on solo. Even though there's a faster way to do it now, it's still not designed with solo play in mind, which is not good. I like how they incorporated zodiac signs in the main Easter egg, but there are too many locations to memorize and to look at, which doesn't exactly scream fun. There are 2 more escort missions in this Easter egg, and they're both terrible and completely unnecessary. Now let's talk about the boss fight for a minute. This boss fight is designed very well. It's fun, it's intense, and it's exciting. Again, I like how it's divided into 3 stages. The game giving you a carpenter as well as a max ammo in each stage is a positive change from the previous boss fights. I don't like the boss himself. He's just another werewolf, only bigger. He looks a little different, but he's still just a werewolf. It would be cooler to fight a giant vampire because all the vampires that we fight are small and they're actually a threat. So if we had to fight a big ass vampire, it would be a little scary. Instead, we fight an invisible werewolf. He's just a bigger version of the regular werewolves, and we can't even see him for the most part. When he attacks, he's invisible, so the presence of the boss is very underwhelming, and he's not actually the main threat, and he's not that dangerous. He does one attack that does 125 damage, but it's really easy to avoid. The main danger is everything else in the arena. The zombies, the catalysts, the crimsons, and the werewolves that show up in the second stage. That's the only problem with this boss fight, is that the boss isn't intimidating at all. When you're doing the boss fight in 9, the elephants are an actual threat that can kill you easily if you're not careful, but the werewolf in Dead of the Night is a bit of an afterthought. The crimsons in the last stage are also very annoying, but this is not a problem exclusive to the boss fight. Crimsons are annoying in general. Other than those small issues, this main Easter egg is definitely the best one in Black Ops 4 Zombies. I know a lot of people like 9's Easter egg as well, but I just think this one is a little better. It's fun, it's intense, and it doesn't force you to burn through rounds. Before we get into this, I want to clear something up. I'm not an expert in the storyline. I still enjoy it and I follow it as much as I can, but my knowledge in this aspect of the game is very limited. I might talk about some of the stuff that doesn't make any sense to me, and it might be because I'm missing something or that we don't understand the full context yet, and that it might make sense later down the line. So with all that being said, let's get right into this. Let's talk about the characters first. We have Gideon Jones, aka the Gunslinger, played by Kiefer Sutherland, who plays Jack Bauer in the TV show 24. Fun fact about him, his real name is actually Kiefer William Frederick Dempsey George Rufus Sutherland. Wait, you don't believe me? Okay.
My full name is Kiefer William Frederick Dempsey George Rufus Sutherland.
Kiefer Sutherland does well playing the character. In my opinion, the Gunslinger is the second most likable character in the map. He's just a chill cowboy who's probably the most skilled fighter in the group, so you see him comforting the other characters a little bit and telling them that they can get through this. Not the most interesting character, he doesn't get a whole lot of development, but he isn't tragic. Then we have Christina Flower, aka Madame Mirella, played by Helena Bonham Carter, who plays Bellatrix in the Harry Potter series. She's okay in this map, it's just that she overacts sometimes and it's a little too over the top and it doesn't really mesh well with everything else she says. There isn't really that much about her that stands out, she's a phony psychic and that's it. There isn't really that much to her. Then we have Godfrey, played by Charles Dance, who plays Tywin Lannister in Game of Thrones. I like Charles Dance quite a bit, he's really good in Game of Thrones. He plays this cold and calculating villain who I think is the best villain in the show, and in this map he plays a butler, and I was worried that he wouldn't be able to pull it off since it's pretty much the opposite of playing a king-like character. But surprisingly, he does pull it off. You buy into his character as the butler. He is humble, scared, and confused. You can feel for him. The Order is just taking advantage of him and he's just so confused and innocent that you can't help but feel sorry for him. He is definitely the most interesting and the most developed character in the map. His lines are well written, and while he might not be the best character ever, he is the best character in this map. Then we have Jonathan Warwick, aka the Brigadier, played by Brian Blessed. And this guy is a TV legend. He's very entertaining, very funny, and very likable, but his character in this map sucks ass. He's not likable, he's too over the top, and he's kind of a creep.
Ooh, that makes me feel like I'm 20 again. I had a bigger hammer then, too.
He's not boring, it's just that he's not likable. The writing for his character is not done well. I'm sure if he was given better material to work with, he would have been a better character, but in this map, he's just not interesting. Overall, the new characters in this map are okay, and they play off of each other pretty well, but these are some very talented actors, and I feel like they could have done a lot more with them. Now, let's talk about the cutscenes real quick. The intro cutscene goes on for too long. It's just the Gunslinger walking around and staring at things. We see the Brigadier and he's just kind of socializing and looking at himself in the mirror, which I'm assuming is supposed to tell us that he is a retired general who's proud of his previous accomplishments. And the Gunslinger walking around but not talking to anyone is supposed to tell us that he is a bit of an outcast. And then we see the Psychic and the Gunslinger interact with no dialogue, and it's kind of strange. I'm assuming they thought it would be enough for the body language to convey the message to the audience and tell them what's happening, but it's still a little weird. Then we see Godfrey being used by the Order, and then they all come together and the trial starts. The intro cutscene doesn't do the characters justice. Keep in mind, we have never met any of these characters before, and this cutscene is supposed to get us invested in these characters, but it doesn't do a good job because there isn't that much dialogue and it goes on for way too long. We don't find out much about these characters, and since this is the only map that they're in, we need to hear them speak to at least be able to connect with them on a human level. A map like Shadows of Evil or Call of the Dead did this much better because we hear them talk and get to know them before the map even starts. But in Dead of the Night, it's just a missed opportunity. The outro cutscene does better because things actually happen. We see characters die, and even though there are certain parts in the cutscene that play very unnaturally, for example, Godfrey kills the Psychic and the Gunslinger first, even though the Brigadier is the only one that has a gun and could fight back, but apparently he takes forever to pull out his rifle. Godfrey stabs 2 people to death with a dagger, and he does it pretty slowly, and the Brigadier still hasn't pulled out his weapon. But other than that, the outro cutscene is actually good because the plot is moving forward. As far as the storyline goes, I like the lore and the backstory of the mansion. Alistair Rhodes bought it because of the Celtic runes and his eagerness with exploring their history. It was a place where the Celtic Druids made their last stance against the Vikings, and they cursed their enemies to transform them into werewolves to protect the forest. Before Alistair bought the property, it was previously owned by a man named Edward Covington, and since his neighbors thought that the mansion was haunted, they burned the whole place to the ground. And I think they're implying that the big werewolf that we fight at the end is Edward Covington because they never found his body. The ghost that we escort a billion times in the game is Edward Covington's nursemaid, and she uses colchicum, which is a plant that's used to treat familial Mediterranean fever but can also be poisonous if not used properly. She uses that on the baby, which I'm assuming is Edward Covington's baby, and the baby dies, and for that they execute her using the noose that we see in the wine cellar. The ghost is actually an interesting character because she has a backstory and she talks about how sorry and regretful she is that she killed the baby. And she sounds genuine and all she wants to do is help you now to repent for her actions. I wish we got that with the actual characters that we play as. They could give them interesting backstories using audio logs or maybe even ciphers. But instead, the ciphers in this map are just a complete waste. I'm not gonna bore you talking about what they could mean, but there is one that says a shadow of what they seek. There's another one that says the daughter will bear the burden. There's one that says the future is ours to write. And there's another one that says serve or sever. The daughter will bear the burden, serve or sever? What the fuck do any of these mean? A cipher is already a mystery. You don't have to put a mystery within a mystery. Ciphers aren't easy to solve, so wouldn't it make sense if they contained some actual storyline information as opposed to just more riddles that mean nothing and make no sense? The mansion in Dead of the Night has an interesting backstory, but the characters are kind of disposable. I get that this is a prequel and I'm fine with prequels, but this map as a prequel doesn't really do much. You could completely take this map out of the equation and storyline wise, we wouldn't really miss out on much. This is not to say that the characters are the worst characters ever, because they're not. They have some good moments. I like how they connected Godfrey to Stanton Shaw. I like how the gunslinger talks about his previous experiences fighting the Cheyenne, and I like how the Brigadier talks about what it was like to fight the Zulu War. But I just wish there was more substance and more meat on the bones. As a final verdict, Dead of the Night as a map is really good. In my opinion, it is the best map in Black Ops 4 Zombies. It has decent map layout, amazing sound design, good visuals, fun gameplay mechanics, mediocre characters, and an okay storyline. This map is not in my top 5, but it barely makes top 10. If they did better with the characters and if they marketed it properly, it could have been a much better experience. It's a really fun map and I would recommend it, especially if you're a hardcore player. You will enjoy this map a lot, and I'll just leave it at that. That's gonna wrap up this video. I know it was a long one, and hopefully you kept watching till the end, and I tried to be as thorough as I possibly can. Let me know if you want me to do more videos like this. Also, if you've played Dead of the Night, I would love to know what you think of it. Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.